Contrapuntal reading or analysis. Lindsay Ferreiter. By looking at a novel contrapuntally, we take into account intertwined histories and perspectives. Specifically, contrapuntal analysis, developed by Edward W. Said, is used in interpreting colonial texts, considering the perspectives of both the colonizer and the colonized. This approach is not only helpful but also necessary in making important connections in a novel. If one does not read with the right background, one may miss the weight behind the presence of Antigua in Mansfield Park, Australia in Great Expectations, or India in Vanity Fair. Interpreting contrapuntally is interpreting different perspectives simultaneously and seeing how the text interacts with itself as well as with historical or biographical contexts. It is reading with awareness both of the metropolitan history that is narrated and of those other histories against which, and together with which, the dominating discourse acts, said 51. Since what isn't said may be as important as what is said, it is important to read with an understanding of small plot lines, or even phrases. Contrapuntal reading means reading a text with an understanding of what is involved when an author shows, for instance, that a colonial sugar plantation is seen as important to the process of maintaining a particular style of life in England, said 66. Contrapuntal reading takes in both accounts of an issue. It addresses both the perspective of imperialism and the resistance to it. As the empire thought it its duty to civilize the barbarians of conquered and colonized territory, the British immediately othered these people as inferior and in need of British assistance to show them the way. Because certain people were different, they required ruling, supervision, order. As politicians successfully stereotyped and othered the colonized, the British at home had no other knowledge or agency to know otherwise. They othered the people of these places as well. And so did the geniuses of the time, including Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, Joseph Conrad, William Thackeray, and Rudyard Kipling. Born in ignorance, the civilizing mission bred and spread ignorance throughout the motherland. The ignorance as well as the traces of imperialism found in the texts of this time provide an accurate gauge with which to judge society. Contrapuntal reading necessitates a vision in which imperialism and literature are viewed simultaneously. Edward Said, in Culture and Imperialism, discusses how 19th-century British literature subtly reflects and reinforces the imperialist mindset of the era. He refers to Africa and India in relation to works like Great Expectations and Vanity Fair to illustrate how the British Empire's colonial presence shaped literature, even when it was not the central theme. Africa in Great Expectations. Said points out that Africa, like other colonial spaces, exists in the margins of Great Expectations. Although it is not a key setting, it represents a site of exile, economic opportunity, or punishment, ideas tied to Britain's imperial reach. For instance, while Australia is where Miigwech gains wealth, Africa is similarly referenced as a distant and vaguely understood colonial outpost, reflecting the Eurocentric gaze of Dickens' time. India in Vanity Fair. William Makepeace Thackeray's Vanity Fair is more direct and engaging with British colonialism, as India plays a role in the financial and social mobility of characters. The novel reflects how the empire's wealth and opportunities shaped British society. Characters like Jos Sedley, a British civil servant in India, symbolize how fortunes were made in the colonies and then brought back to England. Said argues that such representations normalize imperial expansion and the exploitation of colonial subjects. Said's argument in Culture and Imperialism. Said uses these examples to show that even when British novels were not explicitly about empire, imperialism was still present in the background, shaping characters' lives and fortunes. Africa, India, and other colonial spaces function as off-stage locations that provide economic benefits or moral consequences to characters in Britain. This reflects how imperialist ideology was embedded in British culture, making empire seem natural and inevitable.